we've been brainwashed by society. When people think about fitness overhauls, they think of training like David Goggins. You're sold this by society, and it's actually not the way. But what I used to do is think, oh, okay, unless I'm training 5 times a week and running marathons, it's not going to matter. And the reality is, to get it right, you actually have to bring yourself closer to where you actually are.
Welcome to the Curious Corner, where we unravel the stories behind our guests through the lens of curiosity. In today's episode, I'm joined by Jayden Levitt, who has transformed his life from working a 9-to-5 job to now being a full-time writer and fitness enthusiast. Jayden, thank you for agreeing to come on today. How are you doing?
I really appreciate you having me on. I'm doing fantastic. How's things your end?
Things are going well. Enjoying the process of starting something my own passion project, and having fun with the podcast. So I look forward to diving into this episode a bit more and learning a bit more about you. All right, Jayden, could you please give a brief overview of who you are and your background?
Ben, firstly, just to say thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. I've been watching what you've been doing from afar. Brilliant stuff, mate. You've been talking about having a podcast for probably as long as I can remember, maybe 2021. To see the ball rolling now is really amazing, but really proud of you. Like you, I've been hustling, mate. The last 2-3 years, I've been a full-time writer. So I'm a full-time writer on Medium. I have my own newsletter that goes out, and I have a group of freelance clients that I write for their businesses and have a bit of an economic share in their business, which is great. And yeah, I mean, I sort of started my career like anyone, really. I got into my first corporate role, which was sales. I had no plans of staying in sales, but you just sort of stick around. And I think it's weird to reflect on it because all the feedback I usually got from working in sales was, Jay, you can't close the client through email. You've got to pick the phone up. And it's weird to look back on those things because I used to craft these emails and think, right, how can I hook them in? And how can I keep them engaged? And how can I sell them an offer? And I was doing this all on email. And it's weird because I was actually learning my craft a little bit in a sales environment where I was supposed to be on the phone. So that's my background. Wasn't particularly good at English, still not very good at spelling, but I do my best. And each day I just get up and try and move the needle a little bit further, try and get a little bit better at all the things I'm doing.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for the intro. And I know within that you mentioned, I guess, like your corporate office job, which, as you said, maybe definitely wasn't right for you, and it's probably one of the tougher parts of your life and just not very fulfilling, right? For anyone who's listening to this and they feel themselves that they're stuck in a job and want to escape that traditional 9-to-5, what advice would you give to them?
Find something you enjoy, stick at your job. Don't stick the 2 fingers up to your boss just yet, and do something outside of your working hours that you really enjoy. I mean, like, I had a full-time job as a business development manager, and I started writing blogs on the sidelines. And as soon as I could see that there was some development on the blogging, I was all in. And then I quit the job, and I just tried to develop the blogging. But I only got there, I think, for 2 things, which is, 1, I just love it, and 2, I had the air cover to do it, so I wasn't under pressure. And I think if you just be a bit more practical, you do need an income, whether you like it or not. And the vast majority of people aren't salt of the earth entrepreneurs. That's just not how people are built. I'm not built that way. I mean, if the internet goes away and they take my blog away and they take all the things that I've built up, my first port of call is to get a position of safety, which is to get a job. And that's just practical. There's no shame in that. It's just a practical thing to do.
For anyone watching right now, if they are, then you'll see that Jayden is in great shape. But like, he's
For the record,
go on.
I've paid Ben to say that, so you've got to say that about four. You've
I've
got
not
to say
said
that
that.
about 4 or 5 more times on this podcast, mate. Because no, I'm only. I appreciate it. Thanks, bud.
No, you've. I mean, your writing journey is phenomenal, and we'll get onto that. But
Yeah.
obviously, your fitness journey as well. We've kind of done those fairly in parallel with one another. We can obviously talk about how great things are now, but we kind of have to go back and understand what it was like beforehand a bit. So back then, when you're working your corporate office job, in terms of like daily habits and fitness, what was like a typical day in your life?
I hit snooze on the alarm clock about 100 times. I would give myself just enough time to have a hot shower, get into some clothes, most likely the same clothes I wore the day before because I was that much of a slob. I'd get into the car. I'd be stuck in motorway traffic, bumper to bumper, and I'd probably get in at about 1 minute to 9. I have no idea how I didn't get sacked for being late all the time. And to be honest, it was a message in how much I hated it. But then you get caught up in it, and you're like, sit at your desk, and because you sat at a desk for 8, 9 hours a day, you don't think about going for a walk. None of that enters your psyche. And then you have the lovely lady who works in accounts who brings in the Krispy Kremes. Then, because you're in a rush and you haven't planned things, you haven't brought a packed lunch to work. So then you're eating out the jacket potato van, you're snacking out the vending machine. And then any idea that you have of going to the gym that evening is kind of like it's out the window. You think, well, what's the point? What's the point in going to the gym? There's literally no point. So this backwards momentum that I was creating just piled on and piled on and piled on. And then what I'd do is I would use the standard delay tactic that everyone uses, which is I'll go tomorrow or I'll eat healthy tomorrow. And then because I was always playing catch up with my life, I wasn't eating well, wasn't going to the gym, and then I wasn't planning food. I wasn't going on food shops. I was having takeout 3, 4 times a week. And then when alcohol's involved, it lowers your inhibitions even more. So you're drinking 2, 3 times a week. And then before you know it, you've gone from, someone who was actively fit, playing like a high level of cricket, to being clinically obese. I weighed over, I think, 102 kilograms at my heaviest. So it just shows how, not major things, but it's things that people can relate to from just working a normal job and being stuck in a bit of a rut and not actually knowing what to do and how to get out of it.
Within one of your articles, where you write about many things, but fitness is
Yeah.
obviously one of them, you wrote, I realized my inaction and mindset towards my health resulted from intimidation. So I guess, what do you feel like, what was that cause of intimidation? Was it just a case of like everything, like I said, piling up, or what was that for you?
Um, what you do in your head is you have this idea that you need to tackle Mount Everest. When people think about fitness overhauls, they think of training like David Goggins or taking on the world in the gym. Or we've been brainwashed by society. Everything, like, from, I grew up in the 80s where it was like, or the 90s in South Africa, which basically might as well have been the 80s. In fact, the 1960s, they were that far behind. Everything in culture sold to you that it was, no, fitness is no pain, no gain. Rocky Balboa, it's all about the adversity, all about how you're sold this by society, and it's actually not the way. But what I used to do is think, oh, okay, unless I'm training 5 times a week, and unless I'm eating like a bloody lettuce eating rabbit and running marathons, it's not going to matter. And the reality is, to get it right, you actually have to bring yourself closer to where you actually are. So if you're not training and you're not going to the gym, training once a week is actually an achievement, and sustaining that each week, but then adding spokes to the tire as you go along. And I mean, like simple stuff like going for a walk on lunch and things like that. So I had this huge built up intimidation in my head where I had to have this full routine. I had to have this full diet that I had to stick to, when actually it was just, how about you just do 8,000 steps a day? How about you just go for a walk each day? And then, you know, that full fat sugar Coke that you're having out the vending machine, why don't we just have a zero? Because it kind of tastes the same. Like you're getting your fizzy hit or whatever. Momentum's a funny thing. And it's like, you'll see this with the podcast, is that as you get better at it, and it's the same with my writing and the fitness and stuff, is the momentum becomes self-perpetuating. So you add more spokes to the tire as you keep going. And it's one of these things, mate. What started as I think the catalyst for all of this was the pandemic. I didn't want to be surrounded by four walls for 24 hours a day. So actually getting out for a walk to cure the anxiety in the chest was a legitimate, is a legitimate way, and didn't think of it in any way, shape or form as exercise. I just wanted to get outside. But then the steps turned into more walks on the evening. Then it turned into running, which misfired so many times. I mean, I ran to the end of the road and stopped, and then thought, I'm going to walk the rest of the way. I must have done that about 20 times. So there's a huge background story to it. It was initiated by anxiety from the pandemic, and it started off as walking, which turned into running, which then turned into thinking, I want that feeling to last a bit longer. So let's go to the gym and hit some weights. And then I hit some weights, and then I thought, hold on a second, there's a bigger thing here. And I got an online trainer, and I've had one ever since, and I've maintained it ever since, which is amazing.
Like you say, having Everest and then just breaking it down into, you can't do everything at once, and it is like breaking it down into like small, manageable, like what can you achieve? The same article you referenced, Jordan Peterson, cleaning the room analogy, which I thought was just like such a great analogy. It goes along the lines of, if you're in a state where you can't bring yourself to do anything but would improve the state you're in, then start by tidying your room. And if tidying your room's too intimidating, then start by your chest of drawers. And if that's too intimidating, then start with your sock drawer. So it's basically the whole thing of just like, start off with the smallest thing that you could bring yourself to do in order to start that snowballing effect and start that momentum, as you say.
What he's saying is exactly right. And, it actually, the blog was actually sourced from what he had said about removing intimidation, just removing the layers of it and making it smaller and smaller, because momentum is the ultimate superpower. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that.
100%. Yeah, you also mentioned towards the end of that how, I want to say probably now for like the past year, I might have the timeline wrong, but for like the past year, you've been working with a trainer. So I guess I feel like that's probably the other area where people struggle. Like part of it is just like being overcome by having to do everything, and the other part is just staying consistent and staying accountable to yourself. But you're actually going to follow through and actually do what you say you're going to do. So I guess what's that? What role has accountability played within your fitness journey?
It's the top of the totem pole. It's the top one. And it's something I say to everybody. People think that when you work with a personal or an online trainer, there's some secret sauce that they tell you. But the reality is, you have now made yourself accountable to someone for something that is a weakness. And I had to be honest with myself, it was a weakness because I was overweight. I was basically clinically obese. And, accountability is the main thing. And there's loads of people that talk about this sort of stuff. I know Tim Ferriss is one. They've done studies on this where I think they got about 1,500 Google employees, and they got them to team up, and then they got people to go individually, but they paid the individuals to go to the gym. And the people that had a workout partner who weren't paid went more than the people paid. So essentially what we're saying is, you can't pay someone to go by themselves when it's not a strength of theirs and they don't have that habit. And having someone you want to impress is also a very big thing. If there is something that is a weakness, make yourself accountable to another human who is an expert, and that is just golden advice you can take to the bank, because it's worked for me. I've got an online trainer who I'll have now for life. I won't not have an online trainer.
And I guess just like sum this segment off, like just to give the listeners a bit of context to your heaviest to like now.
I was 101 kgs at my highest, and I'm now 79. And I think at my lowest, I was 76.5. I mean, that's when we start doing photo shoots, mate. But no, I'm joking.
Speaking of photo shoots, for anyone who listening after this wants to go follow Jayden, you'll see some great transformation photos, which are just like super inspiring.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate you saying that.
All right, cool. Let's get on to writing. So like, I know like you'd made some like investments behind the scenes, but aside from that, like writing has been the thing that has allowed you to escape your typical 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
Where you've consistently written blogs for the past 2 years, essentially every day. And, during that time, I think you're now at like 3 million plus views, 25K plus followers, which is obviously like super impressive. However, I learned ironically reading one of your blogs that the whole thing nearly didn't start. So my question is, in what ways did the pursuit of perfection act as an insecurity when you first embarked on your writing journey?
That's a hell of a question. It's actually the inverse of that, which is it's the insecurity that drives you. So it's the fear that, I had a buddy that I used to work with, but he always used to say to me, it's the fear that drives you. It's the fear that makes you want to do well. The fear of failure is a very positive feeling because it makes you do better. Now, it can turn bad, but with the writing, I don't try and be perfect. Obviously, I have a process. I kind of pull from both directions. It's interesting that you say about the perfection thing, but part of the writing process is actually a mix of imperfection and perfection. So when you're writing your first draft, speed, messiness, and getting that first draft down is actually a writer's process, because the speed creates a gap for creativity. As soon as you start trying to perfect things at the front end, it closes you off to being in a flow state. So I try not to be in imperfection mode. And this is why I write and edit on separate days. So when I edit for perfection. It's not going to be perfect, but that's my process. So it's actually a mix of the two. And I know that, I think aiming for perfection has actually been, I think it has a negative connotation, but I kind of do a mix of the two, if that answers your question.
I think the reason why I mentioned that was because I think in the blog I read, it said that basically it took you like nearly 3 months to like, I guess, have the courage to finally hit post on your first blog. And I guess like you at that point you probably were just like trying to perfect it and make sure the first one's perfect. But this might be like something that Mr. Beast said or something, but like essentially like no one's gonna see your first video, no one's gonna see your first blog, like it doesn't matter. Like get over it.
I spent 3 months putting out something when I didn't have any data. So actually, what I should have done is gone, let me just fucking knock something up on day one, put it out, and get the data back, and then pivot. But instead, what I did was I built this whole narrative, what I thought would work, and blah blah blah, and then I took 3 months to push publish, and lo and behold, it never fucking worked, and that's fine. But what I realized was, one of the things about writing is that quantity is the gateway to quality. So the more you do and the more reps you get, it's the same fundamentals as fitness. The more you turn up to the gym, the more you show up, the better you're going to get gradually.
I thought it was super interesting what you were saying about fear and, like I say, how majority of the time we're probably kind of taught to, like, if you feel fear, then you kind of need to run away from it. But what you were saying was essentially complete opposite, and it was like you should embrace fear because usually that's when you're about to grow and, like, push yourself outside your boundaries. So
The confidence feeds you as well. So when you post, and I got probably my fourth blog went viral, which is unusual. So I realized then that maybe I've got a talent for it. I was reading some of the best writers, and that gives you confidence. And when it's something you just love doing and you enjoy doing it, you think, well, actually it's that fear then goes away of doing it, and then you get better and better at it, and it's it's a great thing.
it actually moves on quite nicely into the next question I had, and you might have just answered it already, but my question was, do you recall the moment where you realized that you could actually make a living from writing? And, like, what that, I guess, eureka moment was for you?
Yeah, well, it's a heck of a question, mate. I watched a video on a guy called Ray Dalio. For anyone who doesn't know Ray Dalio, at the time he was the 123rd richest person in the world. And I followed him on Instagram. And the beauty of writing is that you can consume content and you naturally just reverse engineer stories in your head. And I watched this one video, and he talks about there was an old Stanford experiment which they did on children. It was called the marshmallow test. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the marshmallow test. It was basically they got kids into a controlled environment and they said, look, and it was basically a test on delayed gratification. So they put marshmallows in front of these kids and said, you can have one now or you can have a whole packet later. And they worked out that the kids who could delay gratification had better life outcomes. And Ray Dalio, who's a wealthy person, came up with this thing where he said, if you can delay gratification with money, you will become wealthy. So I had these two ideas which I could bring together in a blog, and I wrote about it and I put it together. I must have sat at this dining room table and I put 3 solid days into this one blog. So I wrote a high premise story, but then I took the reader on a journey. And Ray Dalio says something really interesting, which is if you save money and you have a pile of money, you end up having a different conversation with yourself to the person who spends it straight away. And then what I did at the end to give the reader a bit of a payout is I dug out all of the tech stocks that if you had invested in them 10 years ago, what they'd be worth today. So I wrote this huge big blog and it got more views than CNN. I think it got about 550,000 views and it went remarkably viral. And I think in the end, Medium ended up paying me about 7 grand for the one blog. Bearing in mind, mate, this was the early days. This was early days. I've never been viral. And what I realized was, and I didn't do it on purpose, but now I realize, was I created a conflict. I created a conflict of people who hate the rich. I think the headline was the world's 123rd richest person says you'll become wealthy if you understand the Stanford experiment. So that was the headline. So straight away, people are like, well, why is he telling me to be wealthy? And what's the Stanford experiment? And yeah, it just went to the fucking moon, mate. And I was sat here thinking like it was nirvana. I was just like, this is unbelievable. But those things ebb and flow, and that was the moment I thought I've got something here, and this is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, that's a pretty incredible story. And for that to be, so that was like your fourth blog?
The fourth one went viral, but then it was like I think it might have been I want to say that like the 20th.
It's still early.
I'm on blog number like 400. I wrote 400 blogs. So that's early days.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Something that I've started to appreciate more, I guess, with podcasters, the classic saying of people only see the tip of the iceberg and they don't see all the hard work that goes into it behind the scenes. So my question is, what has writing every day for the past 2 years taught you that you would like to share with those who are watching or listening?
It's taught me that it's only hard work if it's something you don't want to be doing. It's a testament to longevity. It's a testament to the fact that I actually just enjoy doing it. And to be honest, if there was no opportunity to earn money like there is in the creator economy at the moment, I'd probably still do it in some capacity, because it's what I did during work hours. I like crafting emails. When Facebook first came out, I like crafting little Facebook statuses and putting a lot of effort into them and things like that. So it's actually just a part of like how I'm wired and what my DNA is. So I enjoy it. The hard work thing, yeah, it is hard work. It's challenging, and I've got to really push myself to do it because I'm struggling to come up with ideas or things like that. But getting in that car, driving up the motorway, and sitting in an office, which is like a fishbowl, is even fucking harder. So each time I have a bad day, I'm like, just close the laptop, go for a walk, put my big boy pants on, get back in, and get back writing. So it's challenging, but I enjoy it.
I think something maybe a lot of people struggle with now, especially with the whole like working from home and just other stuff, like it can be quite hard to stay motivated when you're in the same four walls or you're in the same place all day, especially if it's the
Yeah,
same environment you're living and working.
yeah.
So my question was, how do you keep yourself motivated?
Um, I have a set routine. I get demotivated if anything interrupts that. So I have a set routine, which I keep developing. It's probably dead on a year. I've been having cold showers every morning. I haven't quite got over the line of meditating, but I go for a 25-minute walk. I do the exact same route every morning. I get back. I follow the same routine. I probably do about 4 hours of deep, meaningful writing, and then I work on any other areas, that I'm looking to develop. And then come 5 o'clock, I go to the gym, and then the rest of the day I kind of chill out. But all through that, because it's stuff I really enjoy doing, I keep thinking about it, and then it stimulates ideas. And then somewhere between probably 9 and midnight, I have a second wind, and there are times I stay up till 2 a.m. and work and write something if I have an idea. So that's it. It's not perfect, but it's just what I do.
Yeah, I agree. But I think routine's very important. And if you're self aware enough, then you realize on those days you break your routine slightly, you feel like you're slightly off. And yeah, like there's a noticeable difference. So I guess you've clearly escaped the 9 to 5. You're now a full time writer. Um, you clearly like are in good shape. So what does success look like to you now?
Being happy. I think like we're doing this podcast now. It's what, 6:30. Usually go to the gym at 5. I'm really fucking looking forward to going to the gym because it makes me happy. I have an idea for a blog post. Tomorrow is Saturday, and ordinarily on Saturdays is a bit of a chill out day for me. But tomorrow I've got a really good idea for a blog, and I'm going to be doing it because I really enjoy doing it and I want to execute the ideas I've got in my head. So the ultimate thing is just to be happy doing what I'm doing, because I think when you enjoy it, it's like I always relate things back to cricket because my first love was cricket. All I ever wanted to do was be a professional cricketer, and that's the only thing. And the reason I got as far as I did was because I really loved it. I really loved doing it. And I'm going to take some of those principles with the things that I'm doing now. I got lost a little bit in trying to keep up with the Joneses or trying to constantly ascend to the next rung of the ladder and trying to be something that I'm not. But actually, all of those things organically happen when you just do stuff you enjoy. And that's kind of how I look at it now.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, what is something you feel like you've had to learn the hard way that you feel people don't pay enough attention to?
Yeah, I want to pay a bit of homage to my mom. You know, one of the things I haven't mentioned on this podcast yet is the fact that what really put the fire in my belly was after my mum died. You know, I'd had, prior to that, I'd failed at a couple of things that I'd tried in business, and the failure was driven by fear. And after she died, there's something my fitness trainer calls the fuck it button. And it's usually when people throw their diet out the window. But I pushed the fuck it button after she died. I just thought, fuck it. I'm going to do all the things that I've been putting off. All the things that are eating away at me that I think, actually, I could do that. And I just didn't do it. And it was almost like she's still here. And she's like the shield for me just to fucking go full hammer at all of this stuff. And it's the reason why I've gone as hard as I have with the writing. And you'll see that I've wrote some blogs about her and, my experiences, just how much she absolutely worshipped me and how she put me on this pedestal and probably loved me the most out of any human on planet Earth, or me, my stepdad and my brother. Us three, we were just on this pedestal.
No, I love that, and it's a very fitting tribute to end this on. And I'll say that from a distance and as an observer, I think it's beautiful that now she gets to live on through your writing and, like you say, your life experiences, and people are going to learn from that, and it's going to help a lot of people. So I think it's beautiful.
No, I appreciate you saying that.
So yeah, we'll end it there. But Jayden, thank you very much for coming on today. Appreciate your time and for the very open and honest conversation. For anyone listening, if you'd like to follow Jayden, then you can check him out at Jayden Levitt on Twitter and IG. Links will be in the description. And of course, make sure if you want to hear, I guess, more insights from Jayden and his writing, then links to his Substack and Medium will be in the description as well.
Thank you, bro. Really appreciate having me on. Looking forward to the next one.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed it, make sure to follow us, to leave a review, and to connect with us on our socials.